Okay, so good morning, bonjour à tout le monde. Everybody should be able to choose their language. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little ribbon and it has a little globe, and you should choose your English or your French. C'est vrai que tout le monde devrait être capable de choisir leur langue. Il devrait avoir une petite, un set un peu kind of like a little earth, and choose English or French, and you should have direct translation. Ça fait qu'avec ça, sorry, let's start our first session of our 4 sessions. My name is Marcel Acco. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association. And I'd like to welcome all of you. This is the first, like I said, of 4 sessions. And we have a great lineup today. And but before we get into it, I really want to thank the sponsors. So the presenting sponsors, TC Energy, and of course, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada through the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, and Safe Work Manitoba, who has helped. So as you see, we've got a great list of speakers. But before we get into that, there's some etiquette rules, I guess, that we've been suggested people follow. So I think we've gone through the translation tab. So to have access to the translation to choose your language. Some of the participants would show up just as a phone number or a number. If you can modify your name, I think it's just, there's 3 little buttons to the right of your name and you can rename yourself. Rob was going to moderate the session, but if you have questions that you want to put in the queue, use the chat function. So both in English and in French, and depending on the time level, I'll go through them and we'll try and sort if there's some common themes to the questions and ask them to the board. If there are clarifications that are needed, particularly just in the French chat, just address them to me and I'll bring them up, translated of course. Participants are automatically muted. You can unmute yourself, but I'm asking that you stay muted. The meeting is being recorded, and after this meeting, so probably after all 4 meetings, we're actually going to do a bit of a meeting summary along with the recording of the sessions. And if there are any resources or items that were posted with links, we'll include that. So I think now I'm ready to hand it off to Rob Gouvet. He's CASA's safety specialist and will be moderating the session to answer the age-old question, how to get farmer buy-in when talking about safety. Rob, it's all yours.
Thanks, Marcel. And hello, everyone. Welcome to our first ever virtual conference session. So thank you for your patience for those panelists. Like was mentioned earlier, our panelists today are a bit of a guinea pig bunch, but we appreciate everyone's patience. Like Marcel said, today's topic is why safety equals success and how to get farmer buy-in. So I'll take a minute and introduce our panelists. We're proud to have all of them on board for this session, and they represent a great cross-section of the ag industry, and they all have their own unique relationship with CASA as well. So as Marcel mentioned, my name is Rob Gouvet. I'm the Agricultural Health and Safety Specialist for CASA. I'm proud to have been here for about 2.5 years now in this role, and happy to be moderating today's session. First up on my list, we've got Gord Meek. Gord has helped CASA coordinate a very successful grain rescue training session and community outreach event in DeBolt, Alberta. In this, as part of his community outreach, he had the first Canadian screening of Silo the film. It's a great feature-length film about grain entrapment And it also ties in really well with our grain rescue program and our BeGrainSafe program at CASA. Next on our list, we have Tim Mccray. So CASA is proud to have Tim as one of our grain rescue master trainers for our grain rescue program. And he's been a trainer for the past couple of years. He has also helped CASA with voiceovers for our online version of the grain rescue course. We just recently made a theory version available online as well. Next, we have Jeanette Dame and Jeff Dilling representing TC Energy. And so TC Energy is a longtime partner of CASA's and sponsor of Progressive Ag Safety Days for Youth. Jeanette is a public awareness program manager for TC Energy, along with her position with TC. She is a director on the board of the Progressive Ag Foundation. And Jeff has been working closely with agricultural producers in Alberta for over 18 years, both as a farm marketing representative in the grain industry and for the most recent 10 years as a TC Energy land representative in the pipeline industry. And last but not least, we have Reg Steward. Reg has worked in partnership with CASA for several years and has contributed to developing and delivering our safe cattle handling and other animal handling courses. And he's one of our go-to guys for anything livestock related. So thanks again to our panelists for being here. We're looking forward to a good discussion today. Okay, so just wanted to go over the format of today's session. For the first hour or so, we will have a mix of discussion questions for the panelists, and we'll throw in a few poll questions. And then at the last 20 minutes or so, we'll wrap up by addressing some of the audience questions or comments. Everyone attending today's session will receive a session report with an overview and highlights of the session, as well as relevant resources. Okay, so getting on with things. Before we get started with the panel discussion, Christine, can you load up poll question number 1, please? There we go. So the first poll is, have you or do you know of a friend or family member who has had a serious injury on the farm? And there should be a poll button for everybody to select yes or no.
We're only answering question 1 at this time, right?
Correct. Okay, I'll let it go for just a few more seconds here. And so it looks like there's a large majority that has answered yes. So thanks for answering. And it shows that we all know of someone who may or may not have had an incident on the farm. And it does hit close to home. So we just want to keep that in mind for today's discussion. So getting on with the panel questions. So I guess for the panel, can you take turns, please describe some ways you guys connect with farmers and agricultural businesses within your community. So who'd like to lead off with that?
I can if you want.
Sure.
So as training officer, when I was the training officer, just recently I'm back on the trucks, but when I started doing all this grain bin stuff, we looked at our community, and we are a small farming community that's quickly changing to a lot more city people moving in, I guess. But we kind of started forgetting about the farming community, which is still the meat and potatoes. So we started meeting with the farmers themselves. We did a survey of how many silos we had in the area and who were beef farmers, chicken farmers. So we did a quick kind of risk analysis, I guess, of what we had out there. And then through that, we kind of figured out, we were kind of like, we didn't forget about the farming community, but we were prioritizing on different things. So we started going to their local meetings at the council hall. We started had a voice there, and we found out from them what their concerns were, what they expected of us as the fire service. And by doing that, so then we started to steer some of our training towards that, as far as machine rescue. This is how we got involved with silo awareness, silo rescue. And we also had our fire prevention division realize that they need to concentrate on the farming community as well. So at the local Sutton Fair, which we get probably 100,000 people through in 3 days, they set up a booth just discussing farm safety and that kind of stuff. So basically we had to get involved. I started visiting farmers because I grew up here as being the 5th generation in town. I already knew quite a few. So I just started knocking on doors and going out and visiting them and talking to them and looking at each individual farm. And I just we made a personal connection. And through that personal connection, they were more than happy to invite us to use their farms for training, of course, following their rules, because they're, like you say, they're dangerous places, and it is a place of business and operation, and they were great in accommodating us. So that's kind of how we started into the farming, joining the farming partnership, I guess.
Great answer, Tim. Reg, do you have something to share?
Yeah, I think what's common to what Tim had to say is that concept of being there. I've, for 20 years as the Provincial Ranch Safety Consultant in BC, and as a participant in many CASA events across the country in the last 20 years, what I've always found is the reality is 2 things that I always say. One, you can pretend to care, you cannot pretend to be there. And the second one is the reality of boots on the ground and the development of relationship. We have a bit of a unique situation in some of our provinces where there are enforceable regulatory bodies at work. And so sometimes our work is generated by a response to a request by a producer or through a directive from, in our case, AgSafeBC. But our primary way of making a path forward is through relationship. It's through the development of that. And I have the opportunity as a working cowboy in my region who works and rides for several of the ranches around me. I have the opportunity to connect with people in that side of the hitching rail as well. And I think that that whole key of relationship, boots on the ground, being there are so important as we try to develop relationships and have connections, so that there is an element of trust. And I know that's what Tim was referencing as well in his historic roots in the community. And there is that element of trust and the ability to work forward. And it's just develops the opportunity for us to be heard and to be able to share things beyond the things that they know. Nothing bothers me more than any of the consultants that I supervise in the province being trapped into going to a site and telling people what they already know, because there's so much that they don't know. And so when we can help them with that, then we are viable and we're realistic and we're personable, and they know that we care. And you can pretend to care, you cannot pretend to be there. So boots on the ground is absolutely number one. The relationship is right there, and it's developed through that process.
Perfect. Perfect answer, Reg. Thanks. One of the TC folks, Jeanette or Jeff, would you have anything to add to that from your corporate end?
Yeah, I can jump in from a corporate and then I'll hand it over to Jeff, which is very similar to the boots on the ground, the regional side. But I mean, as a company, we operate in hundreds of rural communities across Canada and North America, and safety is one of our key priorities. It's a core value here. We have a motto that zero is real and trying to always strive for zero incidents. So we have a variety of approaches, I guess. We do annual mailings that we send out to our affected public and landowners. And farm ag-specific mailings that are distributed. We have calendars. We've created calendars for years. Our ag audiences still love the old-fashioned calendar. I do as well, and that is embedded with safety information throughout it. Hopefully it's retained. We try and do, you know, nice imagery, et cetera, so people will retain that. And honestly, in the last few years, we've had to get kind of innovative outside of the in-person sessions to hay bale wraps and billboards that you'll see sort of virtually, utilizing social media and the whole new digital platform on pushing out ads that are specific or meaningful to that community, whether it's brushing and, you know, some of the impacts brushing might have, or drain tiling, or those types of things. And then we also have, and this is where we come back to our partnership with CASA, is our outreach to youth and trying to educate youth on underground utility awareness, safety in all aspects, and really just getting them at a young age understanding that there are infrastructure under the ground and what that looks like. And so we have a youth energy safe kit that we contribute to the farm safety days that are out there, as well as some youth awards that are available, and we'll share some links after for those in the audience that are interested. But that's basically geared towards youth organizations. And if you place a one call and you have proof of the one call or the locate, then the company donates money to the Boy Scouts or 4-H or whatever that organization is. So a variety of means. And I'll head to Jeff from a more regional land perspective.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, in addition to the things that Jeanette just mentioned, our pipeline system, you know, crosses the lands of thousands of agricultural producers throughout the country. And we, of course, have business need to sit down with those people on a fairly regular basis, whether it's acquiring a new pipeline right away or a maintenance project on the existing pipeline. And we always strive to make safety messaging part of those visits and part of the discussion. In addition to that, we also do make a special effort to keep track of new landowners, which would be landowners that buy a piece of land that has one of our existing pipelines in it. We make a special effort for outreach to them to make sure that they're aware of what's in their property and the safety considerations they need to keep in mind.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And I'll keep that answer in mind there, Jeff, for one of our leader questions as well. So I guess in everyone's opinion, what role does safety play in a successful farming operation?
Well, if I could take first kick at that, I'd appreciate that. One of the things that really comes to mind with me is that we can't approach this as an add-on, as a separate entity to business. When health and safety is part of the way you do business and it's incorporated within the things that you're already doing, we get solid buy-in, and we don't see producers who are going, I know after a 12-hour day, on a soggy day in a saddle, I don't want to come home and fill out paperwork. So whatever I do has to make sense. And when it makes sense at a business level, it helps us with lots of things. Number one, we get better worker retention. Secondly, we have a change in the culture and the behavior, and we see that particularly true when there's crossover in what we're doing as far as business that covers off safety as well. Simple case in point, no one is just flipping the keys to a tractor and saying to a new worker, here, go figure it out. So they are walking them through a process. So when we duplicate the process, so when it's superimposed one upon the other, where we have a checklist that is everything that producer wanted to walk that new worker through with that piece of equipment, And it also covers off their safety application for competency determination and for safe work practices and understanding the risks associated with that piece of equipment. They've done a great piece of business at the same time as they've rolled safety into that. So they've covered their due diligence, they've covered off training that worker, they've covered off the competency, and they've covered off that all-important piece of being able to say that I did my part, I did it well. And so in the concept that I apply, which is tell me, show me, and watch me. And those three elements boil down to taking care of the primary element of due diligence. You told them about it, you showed them how you wanted it done, you watched them make sure it was done right. That's good business. And so when we approach it from that perspective of this is good business, this is a good way to handle your animals, this is a good way to handle your people, then the buy-in is significant, and we have not asked them to add something on, we've asked them to include in, and the paperwork actually does the job of assisting in the training and the development of the individual, not just satisfying some safety binder somewhere.
Yeah, again, great answer, Reg. And I like how you touched on the quality control and the employee retention aspect as well. Far too often we're concerned in safety all about injury prevention, and of course that is a big part of it, but quite often one of the benefits, like you said, of the safety is the quality control, and to me it equates to more potential profitability in the long run.
Yeah, the byproduct of really good business is going to be a better health and safety record. So if you can manage it from that perspective, and everyone is concerned about being a good businessman, and the time and the effort when you don't have worker retention. So when you have something that tells the worker, we care about you, we want to make sure you're doing this right, we want to equip you for the future, that worker sticks around, and that's good business.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I think, Rob, speaking of that, a lot of our farmers in our community are the family farms. So they really don't have a lot of employees, so to speak. And so a lot of it's sons, daughters working for the parents or grandparents. So it really makes it interesting, because it's really hard for the parents to quality control that. Safety is, of course, it's the most important thing on a farm, because so many of these farmers from the past, they're missing a finger, a thumb, at the least. And so you really want the kids to grow up, wanting to farm, remain farmers, keep that family farm going in the community, as well as kind of do it safely. And it's really hard because they're learning from their parents and grandparents, and so it's very important. And maybe from some discussion, how does a family farm pass down that going forward?
Yeah, great point. Perfect. I guess at this point we'll put the poll questions back up. It looks like we had a little bit of a slip up on the way we formatted the poll questions. But Christine, if you could put the poll questions back up, and if people could just vote on question number 2. So what do you think are some of the challenges to placing a focus on safety on the farm? So choose one of the answers. You may need to scroll down a little bit. And of course, there may be other factors involved, but if you could just choose from what's available here. I see 27% have voted, so it looks like there's still a lot more voting to be done, guys.
Someone just posted you have to vote on all 3 to submit. Mine was like that as well when I did it.
Yeah, it looks like there was a formatting error on our part, so my apologies. But we'll do the best we can with what we have, considering. Like I said earlier, we're learning as we go here, so this is lucky number 1 for us. Okay, so yeah, it looks like all of the answers had at least 1 vote. So thanks for taking the time to vote. And the whole purpose behind getting your responses to these questions is potentially steering the way CASA leads their focus moving forward as well. So these votes are going somewhere there, and they will be shared in the report at the end of the session as well. Okay, so on to the next panel question. So from our panel's experience, could you provide some examples of long-standing farm behaviors and beliefs, and how would this affect your approach with employees and co-workers? And this may be a good question for Jeanette to lead off with. Jeanette?
Hi, okay, well, thank you. I'm probably going to defer to Jeff actually as well, but I will say that, no, that's fine between the two of us. So, I mean, I think from our business and from where I sit as a public awareness, having a function there, it's really around the regulations. Like that's part of what drives our outreach in achieving safety and wanting to keep everybody safe, the farm practices safe. We do feel that injuries are preventable and that a lot of risks that we see is preventable. So it's educating and awareness around preventative measures, or just the awareness of, from our perspective, what's underground, being sure that what's below, all of that. So but the regulations are in place to ensure the safety of our farmers and landowners. And so we want to provide safe information to, one, comply with that, but also to ensure that our infrastructure remains safe and not impacted, but also the people in the communities around our infrastructure is safe. And so the behaviors and the beliefs that affect this approach, I mean, I think everybody agrees that we want safety to be a first priority, whether you're a farmer or have a small business or larger. And it's just understanding that sometimes that does take more time. Most injuries are preventable. So, I saw from the polling, sometimes it's lack of knowledge, lack of time, not having an attitude that you wanted to develop that. So going back to earlier conversation, building the relationships, ensuring that there's an understanding of why we're trying to promote this and have that interaction and make the information available. It's so that it's a win-win for everybody involved, whether it's the infrastructure being damaged or the safety of the people working around it, or just that knowledge of what's under people's land. Yeah, I'm not sure, Jeff, if you can add to that.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'll chime in. And this is maybe pipeline kind of underground utility specific, but one attitude we run into from time to time is, this is my land, I'll do what I want with it. And, I don't want to have extra hassles if I have a project I want to do on my land. And, I don't want to delve into a property rights discussion, but certainly that sort of attitude from a safety perspective carries some risk with it, because when you've got underground utilities, there are safety precautions that need to be taken into consideration, and the consequences can be quite extreme. So yeah, that attitude of I'll do what I want on my land can be a bit of an obstacle.
Yeah, good point.
Hey Rob, with the some of the behavior that I've witnessed within was, we don't have time, it'll be fine, we'll fix it later. I mean, given the short seasons that that we have for harvest and for the planting, so when the younger generation is being brought up with that older generation mentality, that's where we had that difficulty in instilling the safety into the younger farmers coming up. What we need to do to try and to alleviate and to kind of get rid of those behaviors and have them understand that, you know, that extra few minutes to do the job safely or to fix it in the long run will be a better practice, because now, you know, if you get hurt, now your downtime and your inoperability to run the farm because you're laid up in bed injured, if it would have only taken those few minutes. So that whole attitude of, you know, we don't have time for this, or we've always done it for like this for years, that's the struggle that we face with implementing the farm safety within the younger generation.
Yeah, and it's a good point. Like, a lot of these attitudes are passed on from previous generations too. So it's breaking out of that cycle. Okay, does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I just wanted to support what Gord was saying there, and there's two attitudes that are pretty prevalent. One is that stuff happens; it just happens, and so that's one of the things. But when you stand at the side of an injured worker or a dying worker, and they look back on that 2 or 3 minutes or the 2 or 3 seconds of decision, they would do anything to wind the clock back. And so I think that when we approach from a perspective that develops mitigation methods that are based on both efficiency in the job place and skill set, that makes sense, and makes sense from a business perspective, and so it makes sense from a safety perspective. And the other piece of that is I think that Gord alluded to this with that concept that it's good enough, or we've always done it this way. And I find that in a lot of handling facility things where there's a lot of situations that a couple of changes in the design of the handling facility, and I defer to the really solid work that we did with CASA in the handling facility design process last year, that has really helped people realize that if I just change a few things, I can reduce the risk significantly and in my handling experience. So I think two things. One, disposing of that attitude that stuff just happens, it does, and disposing of the attitude that says it's good enough, I'll put a guard on it later, I'll fix it up later. We only use the facility 2 times a year, so what's the point in investing in it? Those kinds of things. And when they see things, so just using the cattle handling facilities, for example, when they see efficiency, when they see a simplicity of design, effective cost, it doesn't cost them a lot to make the changes, and they see increased efficiency in the flow and the workmanship that's available there, and the added safety that's there. Those things all add up to make sense. So there is no one silver bullet, but I think that the overarching concepts of, well, stuff just happens and you got to deal with that, and the other one is that it's good enough. I think that as we start to dissolve those, we make significant progress.
Yeah, great point, Reg. Okay, so do you guys have any advice as to how to motivate your employees and co-workers towards following safety protocols and in their job tasks?
Well, I think in order to motivate your employees, you have to demonstrate that you buy into the safety culture yourself. So if you can portray that to the employees that you're buying into this, I find that, you know, the employees will then in return start to buy into it as well. And you have to realize that, because as the safety culture goes, if there's no one that wants to believe in it, then there's no one to motivate them. Again, if you buy into the system, you sell it positively, it'll be good. But it's how do we get that started? So I'm just going to paraphrase this here, but there's been studies and reports conducted in the past on public in office buildings for when a fire alarm goes off. So when a fire alarm initially goes off, generally everyone will sit, and no one will make that first move in fear of being judged or criticized by their fellow employees. Now, once that one person makes that decision to get up and exit the building, then people will start to follow. So we need that one person to make that chain reaction within the safety culture on the agricultural side. Right? So we just got to keep plugging the message and be leaders and start that chain reaction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And speaking from TC Energy, just from the corporation, it is established as a culture here. We have a safety culture. It's the goal to make safety a value within the company and the employees. And so we do safety shares. Everybody has said in their annual objectives to do shares, and that's the idea of that, is to promote different safety ideas or incidents, safety things amongst, and you're rewarded if you do that. They select, the best safety share of the month, and you're given a gift card, etc. We have CEO safety awards where employees are recognized for acts that are safe. And then we have our life-saving rules. So at the company, that there's 9 life-saving rules that are supposed to guide the way we work and hold each other accountable, whether it's at home. We have a 24/7 safety culture. And, just some examples: drive safely without distraction, use appropriate PPE, conduct a pre-job safety analysis, work isolation before work begins, follow lift plans and techniques. So, and our culture is we do a safety moment before every meeting. So you come together, it's what's the safety share? It could be changing your winter tires or changing the filter in your air furnace. Just those types of things that really ingrains the culture. And I think that's critical. So it's top down and across the board that is what we do. It's first and foremost.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeanette. Anyone else have?
Just chime in there on the, the safety moment practice at TransCanada. At the start of any meeting we have a safety moment or a safety topic. And just speaking individually, that has influenced me. I would say I came to TransCanada with maybe not the greatest attitude towards safety. Whatever, growing up sports, thought of myself as a tough guy and don't always need to be careful. But we talk about safety every day, and it's throughout the company. And over time, it has had an influence on my thinking, and I definitely approach safety with a better attitude now, as a result of that. Pardon me, day-to-day culture.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. When it's part of the daily routine and it's discussed on a daily basis, I think that makes a huge difference myself.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Does anyone else have anything extra on that?
So Rob, on that, I keep going back to the small farms instead of the large ones, because my community, of course, we have lots of the mom and pop farms. So when I was out doing my tours of the farms and talking to some of the farmers, I found that they just, it's I think Jeanette alluded to it earlier. It's the young upcoming farmers, the kids in their 20s or younger, that they're still eager and they understand. I think they're easier to get to about the safety. For example, we had I asked the one young guy, he was about 25 years old, and I said, well, walk me through your silo, explain your corn silage to me. So he says, well, I climb up this ladder, all the silos have their encaged ladder all the way up. I climb up there. I said, to the top? He said, yeah, right at the top. And then I open the door and I look in there. I said, do you do any air monitoring or anything? No, I just open it up. I said, are you tied off? No. Why would I be tied off? I said, well, because you could slip. What if the silo hits you, like the gas hits you? And so I found that he really wasn't even aware of the dangers. And this was like a year ago. And he just, so but it sunk into him that what he was doing could be done quite easily with very little expense or very little changes to his behavior. And he was going to go home to his 2-year-old boy that night. And it just, so he was more impressionable impressionable. He understood that for little cost, for a little bit of air monitoring and a safety harness, it's going to slow him down a little bit. Like, there's no way I was going to get him to lock in every rung on the way up, but he would agree to lock in when he got up there. So that's a start. And so because they work alone all the time. Someone talked about lockout for the most part. They were taking the hay off my field out here, and I seen he had the round baler was stopped, and he had the lid up. Tractor's still running, and anything got all tied up in there somehow. I'm not sure, all the baling twine got mixed up. Well, he wasn't shutting the tractor down, and he wasn't doing anything. So I just said, can you shut it down so I can at least talk to you while you're doing it? So, because he made me very nervous. But they're in a rush, and it's the little simple things that shutting a tractor down, like you guys were talking about. I think if we can just educate the young is really where it's at, in my opinion, for the small communities moving forward.
Yeah, again, great point, Tim. We definitely need to focus a lot of our attention towards that awareness component, because that's the foundation of any safety program is building awareness, in my opinion. Okay, I guess at this point we'll throw up the last poll question, Christine. We'll get everybody involved in that last poll. So you'll have to scroll down a little bit. So what is your main reason to place a focus on safety on the farm? Again, just choose one answer, financial, legal, or moral reasons. Okay, well, looks like we're pretty heavy on the moral reasons, so that's reassuring. From my perspective as a safety professional, I kind of anticipated I hope that's what the majority would choose, and it confirms what I suspected. At the end of the day, we all just want to make sure that we're going home in the same condition we started the day. And really, it's that simple. We just want to make sure that we're working safely and performing our job tasks so that we can continue to perform them the following day. So, that being said, as leaders, how can we influence positive changes in these behaviors and beliefs?
Well, I think that we need to have solutions that are realistic and they're doable. When we see things arriving from a regulatory perspective, there's kind of three perspectives. It's an ABC. A, what's the problem? B, what have you done about it? And C, how you can prove it. So from a regulatory compliant perspective and doing the right thing because it's required of you, those are the questions that you have to answer. And typically A and B, what's the problem? What have you done about it? Aren't all that difficult for most producers. It's C, how can you prove it, that we can be of great assistance in helping them. And the solutions need to be realistic. They need to be doable. And those come from involving people. When we talk about motivation, one of the things that's particularly true of the generation that Tim was referencing, and we talk about millennials, these are people who want to be involved in the solution. These are people who want to participate in the direction, and they want to know why they're doing what they're doing. And these are people that we can work with and who will build forward from an engagement perspective, that understanding that they do know stuff. And so typically when we start to address a specific strategy, I like to engage with their understanding of what they want to work with. So in other words, what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about? What are the things on your site? Because there are times when we might approach with a predetermined mindset about what we perceive to be a problem at that particular ranch or farm. But when we speak with them, what they're really concerned about is that person working alone. And when we start to build the process brick by brick and they see the value in each brick, that's when we see them motivated, influenced to change. Positive changes come about in the behavior and the modification, and you begin to change the culture. So it is a brick by brick process. And when we engage with that brick by understanding the relationship aspect, first of all, but then coming to it from the perspective of what do you worry about? What makes you concerned? And with my world, quite often it's like, well, I don't worry too much about this or that, but I've got those guys out on range by themselves. I really worry about that. Okay, let's solve that problem. And when they see a realistic, doable, boots on the ground solution to that, the next brick is easier to place. And so we make progress in a brick by brick, realistic, doable solution mode, where we move safety from an add-on to an included part of the process that includes everybody in the place. And I work with a lot of mom and pa's as well. You know, we do have some very large corporate type farms, but we have a lot of the ma-pa, two-worker kind of thing. And so getting them there means finding what's really important to them and building upon it brick by brick.
Yeah, I've found it in my past life in the construction sector as a safety coordinator. If you want to improve that buy-in factor, include your workforce in developing policies, procedures, all of that. That is critical. So great point, Reg. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I find that a lot of the changes that could be made, they don't have to be the big changes. So if they if they did a little risk analysis on their farm and they concentrated on where their highest risks were maybe, but there's not always the top end finish to that. Many times there's simple things they could do just to make that change, to make it that much safer. Is it 100% safe? No, but it's safer than it was through awareness. So sometimes it's just getting them to understand it's not going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's very simple ways, possibly depending on the incident, that they can just start to change. Takes a while, and just slowly get them to understand that change can happen. It's not going to happen in a week, a month, but just start that progress. If you want to, it's like firefighters. We hate change. We do hate change, but back to the buy-in, you want a firefighter to change, get him to participate. And I think it's the same approach. It's there. It's back to getting your feet on the ground and meeting those farmers. I still feel that's the best way. Is actually, it's a lot of work though. Go out and meet them because they're busy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, part of the approach for us is a variety of means of getting the information out and to make it relatable. So telling stories, how does this impact me? Why do I care? You know, it's maybe that emotional, how it, like you mentioned, getting home to your 2-year-old son, like there's an effect here, a cause and effect, and we want to bring it into a storytelling mode so it's relatable, but also lots of different mediums. I mean, and to reach the different demographics, whether it's the face-to-face and open house, those old school building relationships, which are still the most critical and effective, but social media and digital and getting in front of people on the platforms that they see and use, and that it's meaningful and relatable. So that's always a challenge in innovating to the fast-moving environment of information is there, but we try and really have information on every platform, and then relying on the relationships, of course, as being key. But for me, the takeaway is, how does this affect me? Like, what is the, you know, what is the impact here? Why do I care? And how, you know, the storytelling around that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeanette. Keeping in mind, everybody has a different style of learning as well, right? Some people are tactile learners, others, they can read something and retain that information. So everybody has their own approach to change or information gathering and knowledge. So awesome. I guess tying into that, how would modern technology affect safety on the farm? Is it a help or a hindrance?
can be both.
But
It can be both, because I know that some of our dairy farmers have extremely modern technology, and we all know that modern technology, all those electronics, all those built-in safety features and switches and stuff, they fail on a regular basis. And when they fail, now they're just business as usual, but they've lost that safety technology that was there, and they're working without it. And now it's back to the old school of awareness. And for some of the younger kids that maybe have the benefit of working on some of those high-tech farms, they might not have that pre-technology experience to just know how to troubleshoot the old way, right? So it's right. I think it's both.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll have to agree with Tim there. And, my opinion, it is both a help and a hindrance. So, I mean, it's a help because, it's a cost reduction, right? So it saves you in man hours, man time. But having said that, so a lot of the rely on and depend on fully 100% of, say, an automated system. Therefore, their focus is away from that system because they have so much confidence in this automated system. But as Tim alluded to, they're not foolproof, right? So they do run that chance of breaking down, therefore creating more a possible safety hazard and a risk as well. It's just too much belief in the automated systems nowadays.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is a real challenge in the entire industry, right across all of the commodity types, is the reality that some of the things that we do, we still do the way that they were done in 1860, and it's still the best way and the right way. And so we combine that with modern technology and the incorporation of a variety of things. And so we take something as simple as a cell phone, which can be a real good tool for keeping in touch, and it can be a good work tool, but it can also be a tremendous distraction from things. So knowing the scope of the piece of equipment that you're working with, its capabilities, and when to best use it and when to put it away, those are really good discussions that our good employers have with their employees. So they are part of the solution, but they're also part of the problem if they're not managed well.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're all pretty addicted to our mobile devices these days. So that's the classic example, just going to the legislation behind using our devices while we're driving, right? We need to be hands-free and have our eyes on the road and keep our attention where it needs to be. So good points, everybody. So what strategies or techniques could we use to create these positive changes? I know it's similar to one of the previous questions, but are there any specific strategies or techniques that we could use?
Well, I'll jump in to promote our Youth Energy Safe kit. So, that's one of the ways that as a company, we try and think of the different angles where we can get some of this messaging out. So we have a Youth Energy Safe program, and we actually have a kit that's available it's promoted out on the farm safety days. If a coordinator conducts a farm safety day, we provide them with this kit. It's basically in a box. It has scratch and sniffs for the kids so they can smell, what natural gas would smell like. Stickers that remind about locates, little fun videos that would be appealing to youth, but it also has that underlying education message around why it's important if you're building a fence or planting a tree. All these simple things that any ground disturbance could be risky for any type of utilities. And the flags, so understanding what a locate would involve. We have the different color flags and what they mean. And so it's a kit that's developed to engage youth and to teach youth. So starting them at a young age to understand what that looks like. And then we also recently implemented a Youth Energy Safe Award. And I mentioned this briefly, is that that is really giving out the award is if there's a nonprofit organization around youth, if they conduct a locate, they send us proof of that locate, and then $1,000 grant awarded to that. And that is trying to reinforce that behavior. Why would I do a locate? Well, this is why, and you get that. And hopefully they take that information home, they share it with their parents and their families, and then that is relatable. And if anybody on the call is interested, just the plug, it's youthenergysafe.com. We've made it a simple, and we can share that out. But yeah, just getting to youth. So just getting innovative on how the information's getting out there and who it's getting to, because that can translate with sharing with family and parents. And, you know, Dad, why are you doing that? You're supposed to make a locate. So that's the overall hope of that.
Yeah, and I guess tying into your experience with Progressive Ag Foundation as well, the youth safety days, I know in my experience, I've seen exactly that, the message going to the youth, and then the parent just happens to be over their youth's shoulder and, see, I told you, Dad or Mom or Grandpa or whoever it may be, see, I knew you were doing something unsafe. So it's that bottom-up messaging, if you will. So that's a great point.
Easy on that grandpa thing, Rob. Easy, buddy.
sorry.
I think that Jeanette makes a good point, and of course the reference and the work with younger people is always good, from 4-H through the Progressive Ag and through the safety days we've done at AgSafe for many years. Really important. I think the thing that we're finding effectively challenging producers now, and whether it's a strategy or a technique, I don't really know, but the incorporation of the fact that there are many things out there, such as gap analysis and those various things, where there are other programs as well that are required, whether it's a temporary foreign worker program or any of the other programs that we can hitch our wagon to a little bit, that cover off two things at one time. And that's found tremendous inroads for us as people try to incorporate the role of safety into a recognized part of the way they do business. So I know that's kind of a backtrack to where we were, but I think it's so important that if they see good business, including safety, and not separating them out, there historically has been a divide between, I got to get this done, I got to do business, and I don't have time for that. But it's all part in one. And I think that as we see the change in thought towards that, and understanding that the documentation that you require to secure temporary foreign workers at your place includes this type of work and documentation, and this type of attitude and these type of activities at your farm or ranch, that's blending together. And I think that might be classified as a strategy or a technique, but it is all inclusive and not separated out into different categories and boxes. But it's all part of the same package of doing good business, making sure that you can get the temporary foreign workers, making sure that you can retain workers. All those things I think are really important strategies towards moving safety forward on a farm.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Okay.
So one of the things we have here, so after a fire, we have what's called an after the fire program, and the firefighters will flog that street or area, depending on where it is. And we're just going door to door, educating the homeowners. You've had a recent incident, right? We just want to check your smoke alarm. So it's almost like and this is just for conversation purposes only, is that if it's reactive, we're always proactive as firefighters. We're always out there proactively, but it still doesn't always work. So just as much as you guys are all being proactive, Rob, at CASA, we still have incidents out there, and that's just the nature of it.
Yep.
So it's almost like if you take a small community when there is an incident, an unfortunate incident, then you kind of have like a after the incident program, so to speak, where whatever the incident was, you could just kind of have some form of some flyer drops or something, because when it's fresh in people's minds, it seems to have a little more impact. At least they'll read it now. They're just not going to throw it in the blue bin. And that's just maybe some option that might work. It just might.
Yeah. It tends to stick a little better when there's a close to home factor involved. Ideally not with ourselves personally, but the neighbor, the guy down the road, what have you, someone in the community. Yeah, I agree 100%. Okay. I guess, would any of you have any specific examples of success stories that you have where you've helped to create positive changes in the safety culture within your community? We don't need names.
Well, I would be pleased to highlight a couple of different ones. One of them in particular involved a bison farm that was consistently having run over workers and injured workers. And when they reached out to AgSafe and we got an opportunity to be on site and take a look at their operation and see that the primary issue was the design of the facility. And with the incorporation of about $300 worth of modifications, they were able to go from a very high incident rate to 0 since, and that's been several years now. And that was through just a simple facility design, an outside set of eyes taking a look at something. And so I think that's one. I think that a couple of our larger ranches where we had difficulty changing the perspective to include health and safety as part of what they did and move from the, you know, we're cowboys and we're just tough and this is what happens, to let's talk about this stuff and let's stop these things from happening and let's keep our workforce intact. So there's a large ranch that has adopted that, and much of that includes moving from tailgate meetings that made no sense just to check a box on a safety program to the kinds of discussions that are three-liners, but they're, you know, this is what's happening. And if you want to change the shoes on your horse, this is a good time to do it because we're going to work over here. That's a good safety meeting. And I think that we've been effective throughout the province, and I've had some success in other provinces moving some of those things forward by, as Tim and Gord both mentioned, doing things that don't cost a lot of money.
Oh, Reg, we just lost your audio.
I'm back. It said that you muted me, Rob, so I can take a hint. Thanks very much. But I want to support what Gord and Tim were saying, because you know, it is super important that we have those small changes, and they lead to the bigger things. People are not going to all of a sudden up and spend, you know, an awful lot of money to do something. And sometimes it's a simple change in procedure. It's the addition of a guard where they didn't see the need for one. Very simple things, and that extra set of eyes. And so, yeah, I could go on with lots of things that I'm very proud that AgSafeBC has been able to accomplish. And, you know, a lot of our people in the field have different success stories, but they started with relationship and a different set of eyes, and they started small. They all started small.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Jeanette brought up a good point earlier too about making sure that the information you're providing is relatable to the people you're talking to, right? So it's pointless talking about something people can't relate to. I know in my past experience, giving toolbox talks to crews and things like that, we want to make sure that it's applicable information for them to use and contribute to as well. Perfect. Does anyone else have any success stories?
Well, Rob, my success story, actually, I'm gonna have to put back on CASA, because I'm gonna speak directly to your grain bin safe course that we've been teaching around the province here in Ontario.
Yep.
I probably put over 250 firefighters through it in the last year and a bit. And through that course, a lot of them were small communities with a lot of the volunteer firefighters are farmers themselves. And I was absolutely amazed that they were shocked about how grain reacts when we run them through the prop. I assumed that they all, because they grew up on farms, they all knew this. And when they saw how fast they sink and how hard it is for them, impossible to get out after getting only as far as their waist, it really opened their eyes. And because of that, I started getting asked to go to a lot of some of the the 4-H meetings, and some of the other local monthly ag meetings, just to give a talk on the grain itself. Now COVID shut all that down, unfortunately, because this was a big year here for that to start up for us. But my hat goes off to you guys and the people before you that have developed, whoever came up with this idea, the sponsors developed this course. That is a great success story from my view and opinion.
Oh, well, thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. And for those who are unaware, we actually had our first successful grain rescue in out your way, out in Leamington last fall, where, for lack of a better term, a city girl jumped into a grain cart that was offloading grain, and she thought it would just be a fun thing to do. She got trapped, and thank goodness they were able to stop the flow of material and perform a successful rescue on her. But from what I understand, that girl had basically just her face sticking out of the material. So we're very proud that we were involved in the training session that led to that rescue. So it's a feather in everyone's cap. Okay, I guess before we wrap everything up, does anyone else have any final thoughts or comments that you would like to share?
Hey, Rob, sorry, I just want to stick with the I had trouble unmuting myself. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay, Gord.
Keeping with the grain rescue and the success that CASA has had with the firefighter training with the grain entrapment. So in August, I had run together and planned together the grain entrapment course and the screening of silo. Now, prior to doing that, so this is a couple of success stories in my opinion came out of this. So prior to running with and going forward with the training and screening, I had gone out and visited some of the local producers. Now we know, sitting on the panel in the audience, is that there is a need for the safety, but was there a want of the safety, you know, that in the outreach that I was planning? Again, it alludes to that there's that stigmatism that goes like, no, we know it, we don't need the safety message jammed down our throats anymore. But as I was talking to the producers on a one-on-one basis, I recognized that there definitely was a want within the community. Now, not only that, and it created really good open and honest discussion about safety in general. Now, when I went out there and to visit the producers, I was more focused on, because generally people think that the safety is, entanglement, dismemberment, everything like that. But also from a fire side, I was noticing on a lot of the operations that I visited, there was some fire safety concerns that I had. So when I mentioned that to them, and I had asked them if they would like some advice as to how, to properly store this, as an example, chemicals near a dugout, fuel storage, chemical storage, just again, and Tim I'm sure can relate to this, but a lot of people, especially in industry, overlook the fire concerns. So after recognizing that, I've had some phone calls from surrounding producers like, hey, I heard you did this over at such and such place. Can you come over and do it here? So now we're trying to implement on our training. We'll go out to one of the operations and we'll do the fire safety side of it as well. And so once I received full-on support from my senior lead team and council and a lot of the divisions, the communications division as well. And with the course, we had 30 firefighters from 8 different stations within our jurisdiction and the surrounding jurisdiction. And when Tim was mentioning that it was an eye opener for the firefighters as far as the pressures and how fast it happens. So we had one of our neighboring chiefs come in and participate in the course. Now, little did we know until after he had gotten out of the bin, he got out and he was kind of shaky, and we're like, you know, you okay, what's going on? So then he proceeded to share with us that when he was younger, he was caught in an avalanche, and being trapped in the bin again with all that pressure and his inability to move and self-extricate, he began to have a minor panic attack. So we immediately asked him, well, why didn't you notify us, right? We would have. And he said, nope. He said, I didn't notify you because I didn't want you guys handling us or handling me with kid gloves. I had to sit there, I had to face my fear, and that's what I did. And he was very thankful, you know, because now he was able to not only experience what it's like to be trapped in the grain, but he was able to face his fears and overcome, you know, what's been haunting him with being trapped in that avalanche as well. So, I mean, I could go on about how many success stories, but, you know, to me, those were the ones that stick out in my mind. After the weekend, because it was a weekend long event, you know, Friday, Saturday, we ran the screening of a silo, and then Sunday we had an open house to the public where we had a barbecue and we set up inside of the station, right? Public set up bleachers, public came in. So through the course of the weekend, we had approximately 300 people combined with the screening of the movie and coming to the open house and witnessing that. And then afterwards, you know, at the local coffee shop, right? That was the talk, that was the buzz. And then, you know, you would hear or overhear, oh yeah, that reminded me of this one time, and that reminded me of this other time. And it generated that buzz and that awareness within the community. So great program that CAS offers for the firefighters with that grain entrapment. So, and thank you for your support on that as well while I was going through the planning stages.
Oh, no problem. That's all part of what we're here to do. Okay, well, I guess on that note, thanks for everyone's stories. Much appreciated, but I'm just looking at the clock here and we're starting to run short on time. So does anyone have any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to share?
I'm not sure if you're leaving time for questions. I will quickly, just standing with our tradition here at TC Energy, just share a safety share for everybody on the call. I wanted to emphasize, know what's below. This is regardless of what industry you're in, and it's also home projects, DIY. We're finding a big uptick with the pandemic and people doing work at home. Click before you dig. It's a website. It'll take you exactly to your province or state. It's North American, and if you click on that, it'll tell you, you know, when they'll be there, and it's free and it's easy. And so please reinforce to do that whenever you're going to do any type of ground disturbance, because you just don't know. It's a simple thing that could really save an event. And then I think this is super applicable right now for everybody. The daylight's changing, it's getting colder here where we are, and COVID and the pandemic has had just a heaviness for all of us, I think. So it's around fatigue, and I think fatigue affects us all at work, at home, our mood, our how alert we are. So a few things just to be on top of that is to make sure that you have good sleeping arrangements, a dark cave, a good routine, have a routine around, you know, that's been difficult right now with COVID, is having that good routine. Be aware of light exposure and getting and moving your body, having exercise. A lot of us are working remote at home. We're stuck at our computer. We forget to get up and move. And fatigue is very dangerous for our well-being and our health and our alertness, which all could result in injury and accidents. So 2 takeaways from the meeting is to stay safe, click before you dig, and manage your fatigue and stress.
No, that's perfect. Thanks, Jeanette. And I know some farmers, I think, are still out doing their harvest right now, so that fatigue is a major issue for those guys out in the field as we speak. So perfect.
one thing I'd like to mention to the viewers, if you are at any time you think you're going to need help, call 911 immediately. Do not wait until you've tried 15, 20 minutes yourself. We come, if we're not needed, we leave. But try to resist that urge to do it yourself because minutes, seconds count.
Yeah, exactly. No, great point, Tim. Okay, I guess moving on, I'm not 100% sure if there were any questions from the audience that we want to address. Marcel, could you fill us in?
Yeah, really, there's just the one question that came up related to research in farm industry safety and if there's any research that's happening. And as far as I know, really there's only the Center for Health and Safety in Agriculture in Saskatchewan that does any serious research in terms of farm safety. There are some research groups like IRSSK, and I think in Ontario, where they'll do research in terms of workers' compensation and risks to ag industry. Those are two I'm aware of, but I would direct you to Reg, I guess, and his company he works for, AgSafeBC, and we've worked with them to develop, products probably arising out of research. So the actual information, tactics, and tools that farmers can use on the ground that are based on research. Just as an aside, CASA is working with the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, work with them to include safety of the people in the industry as part of the sustainability initiative. And I see TIA has identified a funding agency in Manitoba that would provide some research funds.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, sounds vaguely familiar to some of the meetings in the past. So going once, twice, three times. I guess on that note, we'll start closing it up. So thank you so much to everyone in the audience for attending our session today. And a big thank you to our panelists today. I think we had a really good discussion and look forward to a continued relationship moving forward.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rob.
Rob.
Thanks, everybody, for
Pleasure to
attending.
be here.
Thank you.
Thank
You all
you.
take care.